This is Captain Ross. Welcome to our Upgrade OUPV to Masters 100 Tons International Instruments. Established at an international level to address specific issues and areas of concern. These instruments aim to create global standard for human rights protection and promote international cooperation on various issues. So we're going to use these in the context of international treaties and laws that govern the operation of inspected T-boats. So some examples of these: the International Convention on Oil Pollution Preparedness, Response, and Cooperation, 1990, is an international instrument that provides a framework that's designed to facilitate international cooperation and mutual assistance in preparing for and responding to major oil pollution incidents. This international convention requires states to plan and prepare for developing national systems for pollution response in their respective countries by maintaining adequate capacity and resources to address oil pollution emergencies. And by states here, in an international context, they're talking about countries. So like the US, Canada, Mexico, France, everybody has to in order to follow this international convention, they have to make sure they have plans and preparations that are in place and developed to respond to large pollution incidents. It requires comprehensive prevention, response, liability, and compensation policies for vessel and facilities that could cause oil pollution to navigable U.S. waters. It requires that regulated facilities and vessels develop and submit oil spill plans for approval. Requires masters. This is where one of the places it comes into play for masters or operators of inspected T-boats. Requires masters or persons in charge of ships to report without delay any event on their ship or offshore unit involving a discharge or probable discharge of oil to the National Response Center. In the U.S., we have a 1-800 number for this National Response Center. You should definitely have that on hand on your vessel. And an example of this in place, there's an organization called the Marine Spill Response Corporation. It's a not-for-profit organization, and it basically, they built, bought, and crew response vessels that are equipped with all kinds of environmental protection equipment, oil response, pollution response equipment, booms, absorbent pads, dispersants, all these kind of equipment. And they're strategically placed around the country. So like the one pictured here on the screen is the New Jersey responder. So this one's located in New Jersey. And ships basically that operate in and out of ports contract with this company, this not-for-profit organization, and they are on call all the time to respond in case company that has contracted them has an issue with an environmental issue like an oil spill or something. Instead of each individual company having their own response boats for every area that they operate in, this works out well for everybody because we have a ready response on standby 24/7, and the companies can operate in and out of ports without fear of having an incident that they can't respond to. And the way it normally works is they would contact that National Response Center. They would immediately start deploying assets and contracting with people to clean up companies that clean up these environmental incidences and these oil spills, and then they would charge the responsible company on the back end. So that's one international instrument. Port state control is another, and port state control is the inspection. Basically, it covers the inspection of foreign ships in national ports to verify that the condition of the ship and its equipment comply with requirements of international regulations. The primary goal, is to protect the port state, its environment, and the safety of maritime operations from substandard ships. Port states have the authority to inspect foreign ships even if they're not registered under that state's flag. If deficiencies are found, the port state can require them to be rectified. They can detain the ship, or they can impose other sanctions. So what this looks like is there's basically a minimum standard for all these ships as they operate around the world in and out of different countries' ports. And this is important because the U.S., we may have a higher standard than other countries. So our vessels might operate and are crewed professionally and operate well and have high maintenance standards. And then you might have another country's ship that does business in our port that doesn't meet those same standards. So it's more likely that they're going to have accidents, sink in a channel, run into a bridge, those kind of things. So this kind of sets a initial or a standard that the whole international community has to abide by. And it gives states, the U.S. being a state in international context, the legal ability to inspect and detain and impose sanctions on ships that are registered in other countries. And that's the port state control. So the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code is a set of measures to enhance the security of ships and port facilities. It was developed in response to the perceived threats to ships and port facilities following 9/11. It's part of the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, and compliance is mandatory for the 148 contracting parties to SOLAS, or Safety of Life at Sea Convention. The U.S. has issued regulations to enact the provisions of the Maritime Transportation Security Act of 2002 and to align domestic regulations with the maritime security standards of SOLAS and ISPS code. So basically, this is a security instrument, international instrument, that helps detect potential threats to ships and port facilities. And that's pretty important because so much commerce comes to the United States and travels all over the world in ships. So major damage to a port facility or a ship from a terrorist organization, would have pretty big effect around the world in commerce and the economies. So the main objectives: establish an international framework that fosters cooperation between participating governments in accessing security threats and implementing preventative measures measures against such threats. Determine the respective roles and responsibilities of all parties concerned with safeguarding maritime security in ports and onboard ships at the national, regional, and international levels, and to ensure that there is early and efficient coalition and exchange of maritime security related information at national, regional, and international levels. And to provide a methodology for ship and port security assessments, which facilitates the development of ship, company, and port facility security plans and procedures that must be utilized to respond to ships or ports' varying security levels. So again, this is just an international instrument that assists the international community with providing shipboard and port facility security. The next international instrument we're going to discuss is the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. It was adopted in 1965 per the SOLAS Convention to prevent pollution at sea by ensuring goods transported through seaways are packaged in a way that makes them safe. So they use 9 classifications for dangerous cargo. Class 1 is explosives, and this is subdivided into 6 divisions for materials depending on the explosive risk. 2 is gases. That's further divided into 3 subcategories that separate gases by toxicity or combustibility. 3 is liquids. 4 is solids, again divided into 3 subcategories, which are highly combustible solids, self-reactive solids, and solids that emit toxic gases when in contact with the water. 5, substances that may oxidize. 6, toxic and infectious substances. 7, radioactive substances. 8, corrosives, acids, bases, and bleach. 9, miscellaneous dangerous substances. And if you look right over here to the bottom right of your screen, here's the 9 classes and the basically the decals used to identify these different dangerous goods and packages. So when cargo is being offloaded, if there is an emergency, the emergency response personnel are familiar with these decals and can identify what the exact hazard is coming from that cargo. So remember, there's 9 classes of these dangerous goods in this code. Another instrument is the automatic identification system. And this is a technology for maritime safety and navigation. So here's a quick overview of its key features, requirements, and operational guidelines. Functionality: AIS is a transponder system that broadcasts vessel information such as identity, type, position, course, speed, and navigational status. It operates in the VHF maritime band and can handle over 4,500 reports per minute with updates every 2 seconds. As far as technology, it utilizes self-organizing time division multiple access for reliable ship-to-ship communications. And it's required on vessels under the SOLAS Convention, specifically international voyaging ships over 300 gross tons and all passenger ships. It's divided into 2 types of devices. The Class A, which is a higher wattage for longer range and data, and is transmitted every 2 to 10 seconds, and it's required for commercial vessels 65 feet and greater, towing vessels 26 feet and greater with more than 600 horsepower, passenger vessels with 150 or more passengers, dredges engaged in operations that affect navigation, and vessels transporting dangerous cargo. Class B devices, which have a lower wattage for shorter range and the data is transmitted every 5 to 30 seconds, are required to be used for fishing vessels and smaller commercial vessels. These are also what you're normally going to find on civilian vessels and pleasure vessels, sailboats, motor yachts. This is great technology for safely navigating at sea. If you have a receiver on your boat, you can pick up the signal of other vessels and get their course and speed, their closest point of approach, safety information like that you need to safely navigate. And if you have a transponder, so a full AIS package on your vessel, you can send out your course, speed, and CPA to other vessels, and it just makes overall navigation that much safer, especially at night, reduce visibility, those kind of situations. So to keep your AIS at effective operating condition, it has to have the ability to reinitialize, access AIS information from the primary conning position, your operating station, accurately broadcasting of the Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number, your MMSI number, which you can get through NOAA, upkeep of AIS data fields and system updates, continuous operation for Class A AIS while underway at anchor. AIS may be silenced for safety or security reasons, but must be reinstated as soon as possible. Any silent periods must be logged and reported. Standards for training, certification, and watch keeping. The key to maintaining a safe shipping environment and keeping our oceans clean lies in all seafarers across the world observing high standards of competence, professionalism in the duties they perform on board. The International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watch Keeping, STCW for seafarers, sets those standards. And the key requirements of the STCW program, basic safety training, and you guys may be familiar with STCW Basic, and that's a training program certified that teaches survival, fire prevention and fighting, first aid and safety, proficiency in life and survival craft, maritime security awareness training, medical care and first aid, watch keeping, certification levels, professional development, and documentation. So STCW is just basically an international instrument that gives us a basic standard for crew competence and professionalism across the international community. This concludes International Instruments.